welcome to the second and final of the week. This time is the seventh guest, 25th anniversary edition. So the seventh guest.
This was a big deal back in the day.
Yeah, this isn't just any old adventure game, like that's celebrating its silver anniversary. The seventh guest is considered to be, one of the highest selling, I suppose is a good way of putting it. Also, one of the most important.
It's one of the first adventure games that had like full 3D environments and used like literal full motion video overlaid onto the 3D environments, which interestingly is why all of the characters are ghosts, because they could not get the effects to look quite right the other way.
Well, more to the point, when this game first released, it was considered to be the killer app for the CD-ROM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, no, admittedly, the seventh guest is something that I did not play back in the day. Like, not when I got not when we got a CD-ROM drive, not before then, like in school. I do remember playing Myst, like, and things like Cosmic Osmo, but not the seventh guest. Like, no particular reason. It's just one of those things that I did not play during that time frame. And it wasn't really, it wasn't over content, because I played things like Wolfenstein 3D and Mortal Kombat back in the day. Like, my parents didn't care. But that being said, the seventh guest, granted, this is one of those things that's probably lost on the world of today, was considered to be adult by the standards of the time.
I mean, it's about a guy who, was a fucking random stabby McDude back in, the 1920s or some shit. And then, made a deal with the devil to learn how to make toys that everybody would buy. So he got rich, and then, all of his toys made the kids that owned them die. And then he built a house. And then he invited a bunch of people to his house to kill them, or something. It's a little unclear, but pretty much to kill them.
Maybe we need to start up a new series called Gollix Explains the Plot of Things.
He's not.
Also, and also his ghost is constantly snarking at you as you're solving the puzzles in the house, because there are lots of puzzles.
Yeah. So you are, you are the titular seventh guest for, to get that out of the way. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out not only the secret of the house, but what happened to the other six guests. Hint, they're not alive anymore.
The fact that they don't respond to you at all is to your presence should give that away.
Right. But, and, your interactions, such as they are, is with Henry Staff, who is
you can say Staff or Staff. Certainly the actors don't seem to have it entirely straight, but honestly, that's probably correct for real life. A lot of people have last names that some people say one way and other people say another.
Henry Staff is the snarky commentator who speaks when you do something, not just if you solve a puzzle. He will talk during a puzzle, and he will sometimes his speech is usually a clue as to how to solve a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And
he gets mad when you're doing well.
Yes. But before we get to the puzzles, this game was renowned for its graphical prowess back in the day. Now, if you want to talk about things that have been lost to the ravages of time, it's the graphical fidelity of this game. Because this game does, it looks like it was rendered in 1993, which it was, and it's got all the pockmarks of something that was made in the early 90s.
Yeah, the graphics were amazing at the time.
Yeah. Now, they're not the ugliest thing I've ever had to look at from the 90s, but I'm not going to say that these things, that this pre-rendered style, if one can call this a style, looks particularly good these days.
And the pre-rendered video would probably be unacceptably grainy if it wasn't Ghosts.
Right.
Which, again, is another entry in the intermittent and long-running series on making the most of visual and / graphical limitations to good dramatic effect.
Yeah. I mean, I get the feeling that this update was for longtime fans of the game, more than. I mean, I guess it's theoretical that people who have never played this game will pick this up, but they're going to have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit clunky. It's all point and clicky, and the point and clicks are really, they make it really obvious where you can click, but not necessarily always exactly what clicking there does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll click the oops, turn around and look the way I was going already, or look back the way I came buttons when you're just trying to look a little bit to the left or right.
Yeah.
And the seventh guest here was instrumental in establishing, the style of gaming, like the style of puzzles done for FMV games. Because everything's pre-rendered, you can't do the traditional inventory puzzles that at least not in 1993. Like later puzzle point and click adventure games of this sort, like Starship Titanic, if I'm remembering correctly, had more traditional elements. Here, the seventh guest, it's all logic puzzles. And they are they are puzzles that are based off of various public domain things.
Like the puzzle that's currently been done is I've been not playing but reading Let's Plays of the Professor Layton games, and this kind of puzzle comes up a lot where you have to break up an area into a number of equal pieces with certain equal patterns on them.
Right.
So.
And the cake puzzle here is you've got to get rid of 2 skulls, 2 graves, and 1 clear space.
And they have to be continuous, but they don't have to be the same shape, which is honestly, compared to what I went in expecting, kind of a child's play version of this kind of puzzle. But it is one of the 2 possible first puzzles in the entire game, so.
Oh, hey, and other puzzles, there are a lot of chess puzzles in this game. And that's not to say, like a full game, you got to play a full game of chess. They're less than
placing queens or knights tour puzzles or that kind of thing.
Well, it's like the knight and bishop puzzles are actually pretty similar. In fact, they're the same puzzle. It's just you're dealing with the big the big puzzle is you've got to move the knights and the bishops to the other side. You know, you've got to move the white side to the right, the black side to the left, and you got to take into account the unique moving parameters of both the knight and bishop pieces.
Yeah, chess is a fairly common logic puzzle format because it is a pretty much solved system, and also because the kind of smart person who likes puzzles is often the same kind of smart person who likes chess.
Yeah. I mean, though, and to think that chess was once considered to be a brain drain. No joke.
Well, I guess there's some argument to be made that if you're spending your brain on that, you're not doing other things.
It's the same old, you know, this thing will rot your brain kind of deal. But
right.
That's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. Like,
So yeah, as shown, when you solve a puzzle, you usually get a video sequence showing the other 6 guests interacting in some way or another that may or may not hint what happened to them.
Mm-hmm. And this game is fairly non-linear. Like, you do have to complete a set of puzzles before you can move on to another set of puzzles. You know, it's like, and I think there's about like 4 puzzles you can, maybe 5 you can access at the outset, and you have to complete all of those.
There's also a very generous hint system in the library that not only will give you hints toward the next puzzle you can solve, but will teleport you to it if it's one you've seen before, I think.
Yeah, and there are also hidden passages. Yeah. And, you know,
many of which make very little, if any, logical sense.
Yeah. Well, well, the spider puzzle here is, I'm not sure what you call it, but you've got to make sure that the spiders cross intersections, and you've got to make sure like all of the star points are filled with spiders except one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, I could go on and on about the various individual puzzles. You know, like the piano puzzle. That's a Simon puzzle, or, you know, a memory puzzle. That is to say, you've got to remember the notes, play one at a time, and they keep building and building until you either fail or you complete the entire sequence. And the piano puzzle is, you know, that's the one that broke me because it's like 18 notes.
Some people are bad at music.
It's not a music puzzle, though. It's
or bad at remembering
puzzle.
Long sequences of things. I mean, some people are bad at both.
It's not that I couldn't do it. It's more the tedium of doing it. You know, because if you know how those puzzles are done, it's, if you fail, it's back to square one. Like, you know, start at the one note. Now, if you make a mistake at, like, in the middle, you got to do it all over again, and then all over again. In fact, this is actually going against one of the rules of music. That is to say, if you fuck up, you keep playing. Because,
well, it's a rule of music performance, not a rule of music, like, composition or whatever the fuck.
Whatever. The point is, you play the entire song because that makes sure you want to be familiar with the whole song, not more proficient in other parts of the song versus other parts. No. But once again, that is a fairly common puzzle that you will find in many, not just games, but many forms. Like I said, Simon. This is Simon. Also didn't help with that puzzle. It's very slow. You know, once again, we're talking a game that was based off of very nascent technology at the time. So, even though like this 25th anniversary edition is faster than the original version, it's still gonna go. it's going to go slower than you might want it to. Like, now, I suppose a pertinent question is, what exactly is what has been done with the 25th anniversary edition? And that is to say, it's been modernized as much as possible. That, it's got widescreen features, although you can play in the original aspect ratio. But that's your choice in terms of aspect ratio. There's no adjusting that.
Frustratingly, there's no non-full screen version.
So, and the reason for that is, from what I've been able to uncover, this port was aimed at mobile devices first, and then like the PC.
True, and mobile things don't usually do Windows.
Right. I'm like, and it's got things like cloud saves. It's a fairly bare bones re-release of the game. But I suppose that's the most important point here. It's a re-release that works with modern systems. And on that note, I would not recommend buying like the original version that was put out by.
Apparently, this version comes with the free DLC of the original version of the game. So
yes, it does. If you like, mind you, you can get the original version. Like, the original version's been on Steam and GOG for ages, but it's got a lot of compatibility issues. Let's just say. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out when you change the entire architecture of your operating system, a lot of things don't work.
Yeah.
But it's like, in the defense of this game, there's only so much you could do with touching it up, because
pre-rendered graphics don't play nicely with upscaling or any of that.
Right. I'm like, you can't really remaster pre-rendered backgrounds because they're basically matte paintings. They're basically locked into whatever resolution that they were made in. I mean, and this is not the only one of these that I can think of. Like Grim Fandango remastered. Like the part that was remastered were the character models that were made out of polygons. The backgrounds were still pre-rendered, and you can stretch pre-rendered backgrounds to fit a modern widescreen monitor or television. Or
you have to re-render it to make it actually look right.
Right. And
looks like apparently there were some virtual ways of playing the other original versions that would it would work best in a virtual machine. Windows 95 virtual machine thing like that. This is the release for if you don't want to go through hoops. Like, that being said, this is the Seventh Guest. This is the game that you remember from 25 years ago. Warts and all. If you liked this game back in the day, well, this is a perfectly... this is a functional re-release that will work on your Windows 10 hardware, for example, or it'll work on your smartphone. If you want to introduce someone else to it, they can get into it. Though, I might recommend. I don't know exactly how to say this, but it is a little bit clunky, and if you don't have a lot of patience, you probably won't be frowned upon too much by looking. I mean, there is a help system in the game, and there's not actually a downside to using it until you have it literally solve the puzzles for you.
Yeah, like, in terms of, like, recommendations, it's a bit of a hard one, because, the puzzles hold up. I mean, how could they not? These are puzzles based off of concepts that have been around for literally centuries. Like seriously, a lot of these puzzles were drawn from, like, 19th century concepts, because those are public domain. So, that being said, it does have a bit of a problem in that, the lights out puzzle with the coffins is only identified with the flavoring of the seventh guest via the coffins, and not like, it's not like something like Myst, where the puzzles were much more integrated into the story and the world.
It's just here, do established type of logic puzzle, only because this is the seventh guest and everyone's dying. You're using skulls and gravestones as your signifiers instead of, like, circles and triangles.
Yeah. It's like, I'd say the biggest stumbling block to players who have not experienced the seventh guest is the production values, because they don't hold up. There's no other way to say it. I mean, it was a good idea to have the FMV stuff done as ghosts, but it's still like cheese. It's still fairly cheesy 1990s FMV. I will say the acting is pretty good for that era. Like,
some of the acting is legitimately, and some of the effects even can be legitimately kind of creepy, but it's not going to be like super horror, because you're never under much immediate threat on account of there's not like any way that you can do things fast at all.
Well, that as a horror game, this game just isn't scary.
No.
It's one of the it's one of those horror games that has horror flavoring, but honestly, if you're scared of this, you're probably like 8, if that.
Weak to horror. Some of the voice clips are legitimately kind of creepy, and the first time I saw it, I did kind of a double take on the one lady's face morphing into a skull in some of the things. So
I suppose so. It's just
our commenter friend says they intentionally used stage actors because they couldn't do close-ups. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I will say you can tell that they got actual actors for this.
Mm-hmm.
They're a bit more, and even though they're stage actors, they're not like stage actors can be like they can be hammy if they're outside the stage. Like that's a thing I've seen before. And you want to talk like FMV acting has had some of the worst acting I've ever seen. It's like. So
apparently also comes with a making of video.
That's that's a fairly standard feature for anniversary re-releases of behind the scenes documentary. Worth noting, we are going to be talking to Trilobite Games about the seventh guest in a few weeks. And we're going to be talking about to the composer of the game later on in the month as well, as
deleted scenes.
Yeah, as the music was provided by one of the more notable composers in the industry, George the Fat Man Sanger. Probably one of his best known soundtracks.
Yeah, this game's soundtrack was pretty good.
Yeah, it's like. It's like maybe some of the tracks were a bit odd, like really upbeat and catchy, which is, always kind of antithetical to a horror game. But I can't say I dislike the soundtrack. That being said, I don't think there's an option for for you to get the soundtrack independent of the game currently, at least not on Steam. Like, it's probably on Bandcamp or something like that.
But it does come. There is a music folder in the extras in the download. So
there we go. I'm like, I'm used to seeing that stuff being listed on the, because it says content for this game, the Seventh Guest Legacy Edition, English voice only. Now, as far as how much this will cost you, regular price on the PC, $9.99.
That sounds like a good deal for this kind of game. So
let me check mobile versions, because those will typically go for less. All right, like here's the Google Play version. Let's see what is the price? $3.99. Yeah, you know what I'm gonna say. That's a pretty good price for the mobile version. It's like I'm gonna say that the mobile version is gonna be comparable, since it's a point and click adventure game. It's just I don't have experience with the mobile version of this, so I don't know like how well the point and click controls have been transposed to like Android or iOS devices. But theoretically it should be fine. But that's more down to a port. So,
and I don't know if the mobile version comes with all the extras in the folder with the soundtrack and the
let's see,
making a video. So it might.
Yeah. 4 music options. I'm like, it's got all the achievements. No, it's got all the bonus stuff too.
Yeah, it should theoretically be perfectly playable on mobile, since it's all clicking.
Once again,
the only thing you don't really get is the mouse over to see where you could click.
I mean, I don't think I could recommend the mobile version over the PC version, just because this was a PC game first and foremost.
Yeah.
This game was made to be played on a desktop. Like, but it should. It should work well enough in that space. So yeah, I go overall a mild recommendation with this one. It's just you might have problems getting into it, because it is a game from 1993 that's based off of FMV and pre-rendered backgrounds. Look, there's no getting around it. That kind of graphics aged now, and did not age well. I won't say it aged the worst. I still think early polygonal stuff aged the worst out of that era, but it doesn't look as good as, say, a LucasArts game that was doing sprite-based stuff from around the same time, or Sierra Adventure game. It's like, if I had to pick what held up better, the Seventh Guest or King's Quest VI or Sam & Max Hit the Road, I'm going with the sprite-based stuff. But I'm not saying this is an absolute Ugfest either.
A full visual remake of this would be very interesting.
I'd imagine that would be fairly expensive as well, and it's like I don't think the developers have that kind of resource capability behind them. It's like, I can't say that for sure, but we will find out in a few weeks. So anyway, any final thoughts on the Seventh Guest here?
I enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally got to play it myself, since I've seen it all my life and always been interested in it. And I'd say as much as the game has aged, it still has charm to it.
Yeah, I was still having. I was having a good amount of fun with it. I just was trying to play without a guide, so I got a little bit dead-ended a couple times.
Yeah, I admit I used the guide a few times, at a few points.
Yeah. My usage of the guide was dependent on the puzzle. Like, I found some of the puzzles to be devilishly hard. I found some of the puzzles to be really, really easy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I found some of the phononic puzzles and stuff like this blood maze here to be fairly easy. Now, when it came to chest-based stuff, besides the queen one, I hated those.
I mean, like this puzzle here, this is based off of pipe dream. Yeah, or at least a facsimile of that. Anyway, yeah, so that'll about do it for the 7th guest. And yeah, that'll do it for our reviews for the week. The week ahead. So we are returning to regular production. It looks like everything worked out well here. Twilight will be our regular streamer while Petty Fan is on the shelf. With the caveat on E3 stuff, but we will get into E3 stuff later on.
Yeah.
Like on Wednesday. On Wednesday, because E3 is looming large.
Mm-hmm.
But more on that later. So coming up on Wednesday, June 5th, we will be having John Pickett of Manga Gamer. Yep, John's coming back. As far as I can tell, all the ducks are in the row. He should be coming this time. Remember when we tried to have him on a couple months ago? Last minute thing occurred, and he could not join us. We will be talking about a couple of visual novels. Quite a few, if I'm remembering correctly, because we didn't cover the visual novels that we wanted to talk about last time, and I'm trying to remember, there was a visual novel we wanted to talk about, but they didn't want to talk about, kind of an oddity there, when I mentioned this visual novel to them, they were like, "Can we not mention that? It's getting." I'm not even joking about
ringing
this.
endorsements.
I know. I mentioned, I'm like, okay, this is the latest visual novel you released, and he's like, can we talk about another one, please? I've got the conversation written, down on Skype. Hand to God. He said,
I kind of like what I saw of it myself.
Well, it's like, I haven't mentioned the name, it's like, he mentioned, it's from another, it's a third party and it's getting terrible reviews, and, it's like, can we talk about, another one? And he offered the expression, Emeralato? I think that's an Italian term.
Probably. It sounds a little Italian.
The thing of it is, we cannot currently access this visual novel because it's not available. This often happens with the Manga Gamer stuff. Even though this particular visual novel is having Steam problems, John, I checked. It's, we'll get into it on Wednesday.
Okay.
John has opinions on it, but the thing is, I can see where Steam's coming from, because they're objecting to a certain scene where a confirmed high schooler is in the bathtub. You don't see any nudity, but legit
still
underage.
technically questionable.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
I can see why this is raising the flags here, because you've got a confirmed underage character. Like, I saw the scene, you can't see anything, but I'm like, yeah, that'd do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, so, I'm sure it'll be a fun time on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.